Okay, so you know how it is these days, right? You're bombarded with information left and right.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
want to understand the world, get to the core of these complex ideas,
Right.
but you don't want to wade through, a mountain of books and articles to do
Yeah,
it.
nobody has time for that.
Exactly. So that's exactly why we do these deep dives.
Makes sense.
We cut through the noise and we bring you the really important stuff
The insights that matter. Yeah.
from really fascinating sources. And today we're tackling a huge one, Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature.
A classic. Yeah.
But we're not just, reading the book.
Oh, no.
We're using this awesome summary from Escaping Ordinary. It's a really insightful breakdown of Greene's work by B.C. Marks.
Right, right.
So our mission today is to give you the key takeaways.
Yeah, arm you with that knowledge.
Exactly. So you can really understand and apply these laws in your own life. And for our first deep dive, we're going to start with a force that honestly shapes so much of our interactions.
I think I know where you're going with this.
It's envy.
Yeah, envy.
Yeah, that feeling we've all probably felt at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's universal.
Even if we don't want to admit it.
Right.
I mean, there's that famous quote by Gore Vidal, "Every time a friend succeeds, I die a little."
Yeah, that's a bit dramatic.
It is, but, it kind of captures that sting of comparison, right?
Oh, for sure. There's a truth to it.
So the summary gets right to the heart of it right away. It makes this key distinction between passive and active envy.
That's important. Yeah.
Can you break that down for us?
Sure. So think of passive envy, like this. You see someone else's good fortune.
Yeah. Okay. Like what?
Could be anything. Their new car, their success in their career,
Yeah.
a happy relationship.
Right. Right.
And you feel this pang, this sense of lacking,
Uh-huh.
but it kind of stays inside mostly.
Okay.
Now, active envy, that's when it gets a little darker.
Okay.
That's when you actually want to see that person lose what they have.
Ooh.
You might even try to sabotage their success,
Wow. So passive envy is like, oh, I wish I had that opportunity. Yeah. And active envy is more like, I'm going to make sure they don't have that opportunity.
Exactly. And the summary gives us some pretty sneaky clues to spot this in action.
Okay, this is getting good. Like what?
Microexpressions, for one.
This tiny little facial expression.
Yeah, exactly. They can betray hidden emotions in the eyes. You gotta watch the eyes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that momentary flash of like disdain or hostility when you share good news.
Okay.
That could be a sign of envy lurking beneath the surface.
So it's like that initial reaction before they can put on a mask.
Exactly. That's when you see the truth for a split second.
Wow, that's fascinating. Okay, and then there's this thing called the Schopenhauer method, which sounds a little Machiavellian.
Haha. Yeah, it's a bit of a test, let's say.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell us more.
Well, you share some good news with the person you suspect might be envious,
Okay.
and you watch their reaction carefully.
Got it.
Do they seem genuinely happy for you? Or is there a subtle dip in their enthusiasm? A forced tone in their congratulations. And then on the flip side, you share some bad news with them.
Oh.
And you look for signs of schadenfreude, that uncomfortable joy in your misfortune.
That's a great word.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a pretty stark way to gauge someone's true feelings.
And potentially uncover some hidden resentment.
Exactly.
Okay, and speaking of sneaky tactics, the summary talks about poisonous praise.
Ah, yes, the backhanded compliment.
We've all experienced that, right?
Oh, for sure. It's the praise that comes with a hidden barb,
Okay, give us an example.
Like, imagine someone saying, "That's a really insightful idea, considering your limited experience."
Ouch. Yeah, that stings.
Right. It's a way for the envier to chip away at your accomplishment while appearing supportive.
Sneaky, sneaky. Okay, what about backbiting?
Oh, that's a classic.
Gossiping behind someone's back?
It's envy's disguised as concern,
Right. Instead of confronting the person directly, they spread negativity behind their back.
Exactly. And what you got to pay attention to is the nature of the gossip. Is
Yeah.
it constructive feedback or just mean-spirited rumor mongering?
And if it's always focused on your successes,
Yeah, that's a red flag.
could be a sign of envy, for sure. Okay, this next one, push and pull. This is when it comes from people close to you, right?
This one's tough, yeah.
Yeah, because they know your weaknesses.
Exactly. They know your insecurities and they can exploit them.
So how does that play out?
Well, they might offer you support 1 minute and then subtly undermine you the next.
Wow, so confusing.
It creates a lot of emotional distress.
Okay, let's get into these 5 types of envious people that the summary outlines, because I think recognizing these patterns can be super helpful.
Yeah, it can give you a real edge in your interactions.
Okay, so first up, the leveler. What are their defining traits?
The leveler, they're all about fairness, but in a distorted kind of way.
Yeah.
They see someone succeeding, and they cry foul, you know?
Like it's unjust.
Exactly. They can't stand to see anyone rise above what they consider the norm,
Interesting.
and they'll actively try to bring those people down to their level.
So they want to equalize, but through negativity.
Exactly. And often it's because they have their own stifled ambitions, you know?
They're projecting their own guilt onto others.
Exactly. Making you feel bad for even trying.
Okay, next we have the self-entitled slacker. We all know this person,
Oh,
right?
yeah, this is the person who thinks the world owes them something.
Right. They deserve success without the work.
Exactly.
Right.
They rely on charm and charisma, but underneath it all, there's a deep insecurity about their actual abilities.
It's like a facade.
Exactly. And often there's a strong narcissistic streak, you know?
Like they're entitled to admiration.
Exactly.
Okay, now the status fiend, this one sounds exhausting.
This is the person who's obsessed with social rank.
Okay.
Everything's a competition for them, you know?
So how do they act?
Well, they'll constantly ask about your income, your possessions, where you live.
Just to size you up.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, some status fiends will pretend to be all about simplicity, you know?
Like they're above material things.
Yeah, but secretly, they're coveting luxury.
So much pretense.
All right, so the key here is to downplay any triggers around them.
Don't flaunt your success.
Exactly.
Okay, good advice. Next up, we have the attacher.
This is the person who wants to ride your coattails. You know?
They want your success without the effort.
Precisely. They're drawn to successful people purely out of envy.
So they try to get close to you?
Yeah, they'll try to ingratiate themselves.
But it's not genuine.
No, it's all about absorbing some of your success without putting in the work.
Wow, that's almost parasitic.
It can be, yeah.
Okay, and finally, the insecure master. This one feels very relevant for the workplace.
This is the boss who's threatened by their own employees.
Really?
Yeah, they got to the top, but they're still riddled with insecurity.
And that insecurity manifests as envy.
Exactly. They fear talented subordinates, you know?
So how do they act?
They might be overly critical. They might even try to sabotage your success.
Wow, that's tough. So it's important to be aware of this dynamic even with people above you.
Absolutely. Even those in positions of authority can be driven by envy.
Okay, so we've covered these types now. The summary also talks about certain situations or envy triggers that can bring out this emotion in almost anyone.
Right. It's not just about personality types.
What are some of those triggers?
Well, older individuals, for example, or people in professions that are on the decline,
Okay.
they might have more fragile egos,
Yeah.
you know?
Makes sense. They might be more susceptible to envy.
Exactly. And the summary also specifically mentions successful women.
Interesting.
They often face jealousy instead of appreciation for their achievements.
Oh, I see.
It's like they have to
Mhm.
navigate this extra layer of scrutiny.
So they need to be extra careful.
Yeah, playing the humble card can be a good strategy.
I like that. And of course, we can't talk about envy without mentioning social media.
Oh yeah, the comparison machine.
It's like a breeding ground for envy, right?
Absolutely. It's a constant stream of curated perfection.
Everyone's highlighting their best moments.
Exactly. And it's so easy to fall into the trap of upward comparison, you know?
You start feeling inadequate.
Yeah, and those feelings of envy get amplified.
Okay, so we've identified the problem now. Let's talk solutions. How can we move beyond envy?
Well, the summary offers several practical strategies.
Great, give us the goods.
One really powerful approach is to bring yourself closer to what you envy.
Okay, so instead of just wishing you had it,
You take action, you learn the skills you put in the work.
so redirect that energy into something productive.
Exactly. And another key strategy is cultivating genuine admiration.
Instead of resentment.
Exactly. Celebrate other people's achievements without feeling diminished yourself.
That's a tough one for a lot of people.
It is, but it's about shifting your mindset from scarcity to abundance.
Love that. And of course, there's the classic gratitude practice.
Oh yeah, that's a game changer.
Focusing on what you have, not what you lack.
It's a potent antidote to envy.
For sure. Okay, what about downward comparisons? The summary mentions that as well.
Yeah, this one's a little tricky.
Okay.
It's not about looking down on others to make yourself feel better.
No.
It's about gaining perspective, seeing your own advantages and appreciating them.
Right, so it's about gratitude without arrogance.
Exactly. And finally, there's this idea of shifting from Schadenfreude to Mitfreude.
Those are some great words.
Right, Schadenfreude is that secret pleasure in other people's failures.
Yeah, we've all felt that.
And Mitfreude is the opposite. It's genuinely rejoicing in their successes.
Wow, that's a powerful shift.
It can really rewire your emotional responses.
So instead of feeling threatened by someone else's success, you celebrate it.
Exactly, and that can be incredibly freeing.
That's a great note to move on to the next law, the law of grandiosity.
Ah, yes, this one feels particularly relevant today.
It does. It feels like grandiosity is everywhere.
It's the age of the inflated ego.
Right. So the summary starts by talking about this fundamental human need to feel important.
Which in itself isn't a bad thing.
No, we all want to feel significant.
Right, but the problem is when success leads to an exaggerated sense of self-importance.
When it becomes detached from reality.
Exactly, and the consequences can be pretty disastrous.
Okay, so what's fueling this rise in grandiosity?
Well, the summary points to several factors.
Like what?
Increased pampering in childhood, for one.
Okay, so kids are growing up with unrealistic expectations.
Yeah, a sense of entitlement that doesn't match reality.
Right, and then there's the decline in respect for authority.
That's a big one. It leads to this belief that you're above the rules,
Like the rules don't apply to you.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget social media.
Oh, yeah, social media, the grandiosity amplifier.
It creates this echo chamber of validation.
You get likes and followers, and it inflates your ego.
And the summary calls this the grandiosity virus.
I love that it's so contagious.
It is, and it can create this illusion of influence that doesn't translate to the real world.
So you think you're a big deal online, but in reality...
Not so much.
Okay, so the summary then talks about the grandiose leader.
This is the person who embodies this inflated sense of self.
Right, and they often create these illusions to maintain their power.
Exactly, and the summary outlines 6 common illusions.
Let's break those down.
Okay, so the first one is, greatness is my destiny.
What does that look like?
Well, the grandiose leader will often craft this narrative about their special childhood.
Like they were destined for greatness from day one.
Exactly. Yeah. They build this personal myth to bolster their image.
And the second illusion is I'm the common man or woman.
This is an interesting one.
It is because they're often anything but common.
Right. They might be incredibly wealthy or powerful.
But they try to appear relatable to the average person.
Exactly. They emphasize their supposed connection to everyday people.
Like they understand their struggles.
Yeah. Even though their lives are completely different.
Okay, next we have I will be your savior.
Yes, this one's a classic, especially during times of crisis.
Right, when people are feeling vulnerable.
The grandiose leader emerges, promising to rescue them.
With vague but emotionally charged promises.
Exactly. They offer simple solutions to complex problems.
And people are drawn to that.
They're desperate for hope.
Okay, the fourth illusion is I am able to rewrite the rules.
This one taps into our desire for freedom.
To break free from the constraints of society.
Exactly. The grandiose leader claims to have this unique ability to bypass the system.
And people are attracted to that.
They are. It's seductive to think you can achieve success without playing by the rules.
Okay, the fifth illusion is everything I touch turns to gold.
This one's all about maintaining an image of infallibility.
Like they can do no wrong.
They exaggerate their successes and blame others for their failures.
So they never take responsibility.
Nope. It's always someone else's fault.
Okay, and the final illusion is I'm invulnerable.
This one's dangerous. It leads to reckless risk-taking.
Driven by a craving for fame and attention.
They're so caught up in their own grandiosity.
Like they lose touch with reality.
Exactly, and eventually reality always catches up.
So grandiosity can clearly lead to some pretty destructive outcomes.
It can, but the summary also talks about practical grandiosity.
So like a healthy version.
Exactly. It's about channeling that ambition in a positive way.
Okay, I like that. So how do you do that?
Well, the first principle is honest self-awareness.
You got to acknowledge those grandiose desires within yourself.
Right, and once you do that, you can start to direct them consciously.
Okay, and then
Focusing your energy is key.
instead of being scattered.
Exactly. Break down those big ambitions into smaller, manageable steps.
That makes it less overwhelming.
Right, and then maintain a connection to reality.
How do you do that?
Seek feedback from others.
Okay.
Don't expect perfection right away,
Right, Rome wasn't built in a day.
and then challenge yourself just beyond your comfort zone.
To avoid boredom.
Exactly. And finally, and this might sound surprising,
Okay.
don't completely suppress that grandiose energy.
Really?
The summary compares it to a wild animal.
Yeah.
It needs some freedom to roam.
I like that analogy.
So give yourself permission to explore new skills to pursue those seemingly unattainable ideas.
But with a grounded, practical approach.
Exactly.
I love that that's a really interesting way to reframe grandiosity. Okay, let's move on to the law of gender rigidity.
This one's all about the masculine and feminine aspects within all of us.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell us more.
Well, the summary starts by saying that everyone has this blend of masculine and feminine qualities. It's influenced by our genetics and our upbringing.
Particularly the opposite sex parent.
Exactly. But societal gender roles often force us to suppress certain parts of ourselves.
So we end up conforming to these narrow expectations.
And that can lead to an inauthentic expression of who we really are.
So we're not fully embracing our true selves.
Right, and the summary brings up Carl Jung's concepts of the anima and the animus.
Okay, refresh our memory on those.
So the anima is the unconscious feminine side within men,
Okay,
and the animus is the unconscious masculine side in women.
I see. So the idea is that we all have both within us.
Exactly.
Got it.
And Jung believed that integrating these repressed traits was crucial for psychological wholeness.
For becoming a more complete individual.
Exactly.
The summary also suggests that these unrecognized traits can actually influence our romantic choices.
Oh, absolutely.
And even contribute to relationship breakdowns.
It makes sense if you think about it.
Yeah, how so?
Well, we might be unconsciously seeking partners who embody those repressed aspects of ourselves.
So we're trying to find completion through the relationship.
Exactly. But if those projections aren't based in reality,
It can lead to disappointment.
and ultimately the relationship might fall apart.
Okay, so the summary outlines 6 common gender projection types, and I think these are really helpful for understanding these dynamics.
Oh, for sure. They can shed a lot of light on our relationship patterns.
Okay, so first up we have the devilish romantic.
This is often a woman who's drawn to older, successful men.
Okay,
She might be subconsciously seeking the kind of attention and validation she received from her father.
oh, I see.
But the problem is when those idealized expectations don't match reality,
The man turns out to be flawed.
and she feels trapped in a dynamic that's echoing her past.
Okay, then there's the elusive woman of perfection.
This is kind of a parallel pattern for men.
Okay.
They idealize a woman based on limited interactions.
Yeah. They project all these perfect qualities onto her.
But inevitably, those imperfections surface,
And he's disillusioned.
and the pattern often repeats with other women.
So it's like he's chasing an ideal that doesn't exist.
Exactly. And this can stem from a lack of emotional support from his mother.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, that's interesting. What about the lovable rebel?
this is often a woman who's attracted to men who defy authority.
Okay.
It might be a reaction against a strict or controlling father figure.
Interesting. So she's drawn to this sense of rebellion.
Exactly. She's seeking the independence she didn't feel she had.
Okay. Then there's the fallen woman.
This is when a man is drawn to a woman who's perceived as imperfect.
Okay.
You know, maybe she's from a different social circle or has a troubled past,
Right.
and he feels this urge to rescue her.
But often he ends up being exploited.
It's like a savior complex gone wrong.
Okay, and then the superior man.
This is a woman who's attracted to powerful, confident men,
Okay.
and it might stem from her own feelings of inferiority.
So she's trying to compensate
Exactly. She might exaggerate their positive qualities.
and end up with a partner who's controlling or manipulative.
It's a dangerous dynamic.
Okay. And finally, the woman to worship him.
This is the man who seeks constant adoration from his partner.
Okay.
He needs that validation to boost his ego.
And it probably stems from his relationship with his mother.
Exactly, if she showered him with attention and praise.
He might expect the same from his romantic partners.
And if he doesn't get it?
It can lead to insecurity and resentment.
Exactly.
Okay, so those are some pretty intense patterns.
They are, but recognizing them can be so helpful.
For understanding our own behavior and the behavior of others.
Exactly. And the summary wraps up this section by talking about the original man or woman.
Okay, what does that mean?
Well, the idea is that in childhood, before we're fully socialized,
Huh.
our sense of self is more fluid, you know.
Less defined by gender roles.
But as we grow up, we start to internalize those societal expectations.
We trim away parts of ourselves to fit in.
And that can lead to suppression of those vital aspects of our personality.
So the key takeaway is to rediscover that original self.
Exactly. And create a gender role that truly aligns with who you are.
Not the role that society expects you to play.
Right.
That's really empowering. Okay, let's move on to the law of aimlessness. This is all about finding your purpose, right?
It is. It's about understanding that without a clear sense of direction, we're just wandering aimlessly.
Right. And the summary quotes Nietzsche here, "He who has a why to live can bear with almost anyhow."
That's powerful. It highlights the importance of having that driving force in your life.
And finding your purpose has some pretty significant benefits, right?
Oh, yeah. It leads to greater self-understanding.
Okay.
It reduces insecurity, and it can even lower your risk of depression.
Wow, that's huge.
It is, because when you have a purpose, you know who you are and where you're going.
It gives you that sense of grounding.
Exactly.
The summary also talks about being mindful of the company you keep in terms of their sense of purpose.
Yeah, the people you surround yourself with can have a big impact.
So you want to avoid people who are driven by false purposes.
Right, because they'll drain your energy and pull you off course.
But on the flip side, being around purposeful people,
It can be incredibly inspiring and motivating.
and the summary suggests that purpose can act as a force multiplier for your character.
It can channel your energy and talents in a focused way.
So it's like all your strengths are working in harmony.
Exactly. It amplifies your impact.
Okay, so how do you actually develop this sense of purpose? The summary outlines 5 key strategies.
Right. So the first one is discovering your calling.
Finding that thing you're naturally drawn to.
Exactly. Think back to those early moments in your life when you felt effortless joy,
Like you were in your element.
Exactly. And don't be afraid of criticism.
Really?
Use it as fuel to improve your craft.
Interesting. And surround yourself with purposeful people.
Yeah, their energy will rub off on you.
Okay, the second strategy is creating a ladder of descending goals
This is about breaking down those big, ambitious goals.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Exactly, so you don't get overwhelmed.
Makes sense. And the third strategy is dedicating uninterrupted time to work and finding states of flow.
Ah, flow state. That's
Oh.
where the magic happens.
It's that feeling of being completely absorbed in what you're doing.
Time just melts away.
And you're totally in the zone.
Exactly, and the focus here is on finding joy in the process, not just the outcome.
Okay, now the summary also warns about the lure of false purposes. These are the things that might seem appealing, but ultimately don't provide true meaning.
Right, they're like empty calories for the soul.
Okay, so first up, the pursuit of pleasure.
This is when you're constantly chasing external stimulation.
Like you're trying to fill a void with fleeting gratification.
And it never really satisfies.
Because true purpose often involves discipline and self-imposed limits.
Exactly.
Okay, what about causes and cults?
This is when people get swept up in groups with vague objectives.
So they're seeking belonging, but...
The cause itself might be misguided or even harmful.
And they can lose their sense of individual purpose in the process.
Exactly.
Okay, what about money and success?
A lot of people strive for those things.
If the summary says they should be a byproduct of purpose.
Not the primary driver.
So if you're just chasing money
You might achieve it, but you'll still feel empty.
because it's not aligned with your true calling,
Right.
okay, what about attention?
This one's huge in the age of social media.
Everyone wants to be seen and heard.
But true fulfillment comes from creating something of value, not just seeking attention for its own sake.
Right, so it's about the work, not the validation.
Exactly.
And finally, cynicism.
This is the void as purpose.
That's a powerful phrase.
It's the belief that nothing really matters.
So why bother?
And while cynicism might feel intellectually superior,
It lacks the constructive energy of a true purpose.
exactly, it's a dead end.
Okay, let's move on to the law of conformity. This one's all about the pressure to fit in.
It is, and it's a powerful force.
The summary talks about the social personality.
Those unconscious changes in our behavior when we're in a group.
Right, we adapt to the group's norms.
And Eric Hoffer said it well. When people are free to do as they please, they usually imitate each other.
So true. We're wired to conform.
It's a survival instinct,
Okay, so the summary outlines 4 main ways that groups can influence our behavior.
The first one is the desire to fit in.
We want to be accepted.
We adjust our appearance, our language, even our beliefs.
To blend in.
Exactly.
And then there's the need to perform.
We become actors on the social stage
We tailor our actions to gain approval.
and be seen as loyal members of the group.
It's like a subtle performance.
It is.
Okay, and then emotional contagion.
This is when the emotions of the group influence our own emotions.
Like we get swept up in the collective mood.
Exactly. Think about a sporting event or a protest.
The energy is palpable.
It is, and it can be contagious.
And finally, hypercertainty.
This is when the group's beliefs become our beliefs.
Even if we have doubts.
We get caught up in the shared sense of conviction.
And that can be dangerous.
It can lead to rash decisions,
So it's important to maintain that ability to question and doubt.
even within a group setting.
Absolutely. Okay, so the summary also points out that the size and established nature of a group's culture can influence its power.
Yeah, the bigger and more ingrained the culture.
The harder it is to resist.
Exactly.
So the summary then delves into group dynamics and the key forces that are at play within any group.
The first one is group culture, the underlying spirit and the ideal state that the group strives for.
So the shared values and beliefs that define the group.
Exactly.
And then group rules and codes, These are the often unwritten standards of behavior.
The unspoken rules that govern the group's interactions.
And the group core, this sounds a bit like palace intrigue.
It is. It's the informal hierarchy within the group.
Who has the power, who's vying for power?
Exactly. It's like a mini society.
And then the group enemy, this is the external force that can unite the group.
It could be a rival organization or a competing ideology.
It gives the group a common adversary.
And that strengthens their bonds.
Makes sense. And finally, group factions. These are the subgroups that can emerge within a larger group.
And if they become too powerful, they can destabilize the whole structure.
So it's important to maintain a sense of unity.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the summary also talks about the court and the courtiers and identifies some of the key players in these power struggles.
Like the intriguer, the stirrer, and the gatekeeper.
Okay, I'm picturing a Shakespearean drama unfolding.
Haha. It can feel like that sometimes.
Okay, so how can you create a healthy reality group? The summary offers 5 key strategies.
The first one is instilling a collective sense of purpose.
Give people a shared goal to rally around.
Exactly, and make sure it's clear and publicized.
So everyone's on the same page.
Right.
What's the second strategy?
Assemble a team of capable lieutenants.
Delegate responsibility.
Exactly. Even if it feels scary.
Because you can't do it all yourself.
Right. You need a strong team to support you.
Okay. The third strategy is letting information and ideas flow freely.
Encourage open communication.
Transparency is key.
It builds trust.
Okay. And then infecting the group with productive emotions.
This is about leading by example.
Your attitude, your work ethic, it all rubs off on the group.
So be the leader you want to see.
And finally, forging a battle-tested group.
Intentionally challenge the group.
To build resilience.
And strengthen their bonds.
That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to the law of fickleness. This one's about maintaining authority.
It is. And it's not easy.
People are fickle.
They can turn on a dime.
So the summary talks about authority as creating the appearance of power, legitimacy, and fairness.
But it's also about serving your followers.
Not just wielding power over them.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance.
So the summary outlines several strategies for establishing and maintaining authority.
The first one is authenticity.
Being true to yourself.
Find an authority style that flows naturally from your character.
Don't try to be someone you're not.
If it won't work, people will see through it.
Okay, and the second strategy is focusing outwardly.
Shift your attention away from yourself.
And towards the needs of your followers.
Be a good listener, understand their concerns.
Lead with empathy.
Exactly.
Okay, the third strategy is the vision.
Have a long-term perspective.
Don't get bogged down in the day-to-day drama.
Keep your eye on the big picture.
And then the tone.
This is about leading by example.
Your actions speak louder than words.
Show your followers that you're willing to work hard and make sacrifices.
And that you're committed to the cause.
Exactly.
Okay, the next strategy is stirring conflicting emotions.
This one's a little counterintuitive.
How so?
Well, it's about creating an aura of mystery.
Okay.
By mixing signals, don't be too predictable.
Keep people guessing.
Exactly. It keeps them engaged.
Okay, and then never appearing to take, always to give.
This is about generosity.
Don't make your followers feel used or exploited.